Welcome back. The last trading day of the week. So far, Equity Bank continues to dominate with regards to trade. 17 million shares have gone through this particular counter. There's also a bit of traction coming on KCB. About 2 million shares have also traded. Today, the banks are not up there with regards to being the top performers on price. The top performers have been anything but banks, so we're sort of getting the sense that now the market has actually settled down, is evaluating the fundamental impact of this rate cap repeal. Either that or they are waiting for Parliament to come back from recess, which is the 29th, and then they have a window up until 1st of November to decide whether they will vote against or they will allow for the presidential direction to actually remove the rate cap to happen. Now, stepping aside from the rate cap conversation, Kenya is going through a session where the Parliament has reviewed the cap on debt ceilings, with turning this from a percentage with regards to 50% of GDP and taking this to 9 trillion. Now, the bulk of this extended borrowing will actually be allocated to infrastructure spend. We have spent a bit of time looking at what some other countries, Germany in particular, have done with regards to infrastructure. Are there any read-throughs between us and Germany being a fast world country? Certainly there are. There is an economic benefit for infrastructure, but how are we doing it, and could we do it better? We are joined by Dr. Thild Becker, who's a transport strategy in Germany. Dr. Becker, before we took a break, we're just talking about the element of the read-throughs between Kenya and Germany. But now I want us to look at another element of infrastructure spending, and this is the railway, because you've already said our roads, we could keep building roads, but then they may not be sufficient, and the usability or the benefit that it actually has with regards to the population around it could be 10 to 15%. Now let's take a look at railroad spending. What are the benefits? What are the advantages of spending on railroads? What does that mean for us as a country in the longer term?
Railroads are a very efficient mode of transport, both for passengers but also for goods transport, especially when it comes to dangerous goods. The safety balance of the railway system is very good. So there are strong benefits for the whole society, especially in the long run.
Okay.
There is simply steel on steel, which makes it very energy efficient. There's also a good environmental balance in terms of noise. It's highly concentrated to a small corridor. Air pollution is also pretty good, especially when you do electrification of the railway line in the long run, which can be easily added 1 or 2 decades after building the actual line. Especially in terms of climate change, the railway has a huge efficiency surplus. Those investments will pay off in the long run.
Okay.
What I have not covered so far is the safety balance of the railway. Depending on the safety of roads, railway is about 10 to 100 times safer than road transport.
Okay.
Both for passengers but also for cargo transport. So this is a good way to actually get down with a large number of traffic accidents happening in Kenya. Like, in my perspective, of course, I got some shots personally before coming here for medical diseases, but what I really would have liked to have from the doctor is a shot against traffic accidents. That was not available, however.
Okay,
but that was really the main risk I was afraid of when coming here.
Okay, that's interesting. And if we look at Kenya, and you have done a bit of, you've cycled actually all the way through into Kampala, which means you've gotten a good trajectory with regards to the terrain, the road, and the railway infrastructure. Is there an extensive railway line in Germany, and what has that meant for Germany's development?
Well, in Germany, the railways were built in the 1850s already with a rather dense network. Nowadays, the whole economy is highly dependent on the railway network.
Is this for cargo or also
both?
For, all right.
There are bullet trains for passenger transport, but there are also trains going to the more the rural areas in the countryside. and the same for cargo transport, like the whole automobile industry could not produce the vehicles without the functioning railway network.
Okay.
In fact, we are right now at the point where we are running out of capacity. We really have to extend the network just to deal with the demand which is already available.
All right. Then the final question just on this element, because I can see the benefit of actually having an extensive railroad network, especially if you're dealing in cargo and if you're building or enabling an environment for industries to thrive in that particular country. Now, in the case of Germany, is it the railway came first and then the industries developed, or did the industries start to develop and then the government see a need for the transport and actually now begin to spend on infrastructure in that regard?
Well, there are more than 150 years of railway history already in Germany. Of course, the whole railway system back then, there were no cars when it was invented. That really helped the industrialization process taking place in the country. And there were no cars back then, so there were either horse carriages or the railway.
Okay.
Both for passenger transport, but also for cargo.
All right.
So it was absolutely essential for the economy, and of course there are all those benefits. I think what is important is not to just focus the railway on the main urban centers like Mombasa, Nairobi, Kisumu, and so on. No, the benefits of the railway system should also be brought into the countryside. There need to be stops along the railway lines so that even the rural areas can get the benefits from the railway system, and new firms, new companies can start growing and actually settle down there.
All right, maybe my final question on this regard. So I can understand the element of having an extensive railway network, because at the point in time, the whole world was going through the industrialization phase and you needed it. It was pertinent for your growth. Without it, you would not necessarily have gotten to being a first world country. So today we're in an area where technology, really, the 4G revolution, is driving or allowing for countries to leapfrog without necessarily having the old kind of capital resources to grow. So is there still an opportunity, and is there still a need for other infrastructure over and above technology if a country like the country of Kenya wants to develop?
I think railway infrastructure or public transport in general is absolutely essential for the development of the country. The road system really turned out to be inefficient in many industrialized countries.
Yes.
People are moving back from that, which is quite difficult because it interferes with the behavior of the people. But there is a clear need, and railway is a long-term future.
Okay.
What is important, however, is that there are also it's implemented in a good way, like railway infrastructure, which does not last for several decades, will not pay off in the long run. So the quality is absolutely essential, and you need a very good project management to actually build those new railway lines.
Okay, so there is a case for it, and then I suppose the population has to be able to hold the government of the day accountable with regards to this is what you're taking the money to do and this is what you're applying it to do, and then we are finding a way of extracting value from it. Is there a body that does this in Germany, or how is it that you as an individual in Germany can hold your government to account for every dollar or every amount of money that is spent on infrastructure?
Well, that's really a good question. The railway system is owned by the national government by 100%. However, it operates as a private stock company. To be honest, in the last 15-20 years, the national government was not really interested in steering the company, in giving a direction how to improve there. So in fact, right now we are at a point where there are urgent changes, urgent improvements necessary for the railway system. So the whole organizational setup is very important to take a look at.
Yes.
I cannot do any recommendation there.
Okay, fair
There
enough.
are plenty of examples around the world how to operate such a system, how the organizations can be set up. Just look around, learn from the mistakes from other countries, and also the things which are going good, the best cases pretty much. And
okay, so there's, all right. Okay, but I like the idea that you've brought out in terms of the fact that the railways is a government entity, but it is listed, which allows for private ownership.
Definitely, a good public transport system needs subsidies from the government.
Okay.
A matatu system like here in Kenya, of course, those firms operate on a private basis. But in order to implement like a bus rapid transit system as it's being discussed and hopefully implemented along Thika Road, you need governmental money. There is no good working public transportation system around the world which pays off all by itself and still has a good customer service, addressing all groups in society as possible passengers.
All right. I think that I still want to circle back on the fact that this company is listed and certainly gets subsidies from the government. Has this company come into the public market to look for debt or to raise equity to be able to develop the rail infrastructure?
Well, the principle set up in Germany is that new railway lines are funded completely by the government budget. The operation has to use the revenues from ticket sales, cargo, and so on. And those revenues also have to pay for the maintenance of the existing network.
Okay.
But all new additions to the network, they are completely funded by the national government.
By the national government. All right, then in closing, our time has almost come to an end. But I want to come back to the element of the fact that you were here in 2011, now you're here in 2019. What's the sense that you get in Kenya? Is Kenya getting into a better place? Are you excited being here? Do you see a lot of optimism? Because you're a person who's looking from the outside in. Are you positive about where the country is going from all the things that you've had, all your engagements, conferences in the last 1 week? How would you look at us without necessarily ranking us? What would your sense be?
I think the whole country is doing very well. I really noticed a lot of development going on. As I said, building new roads are not always the best thing, so you really have to discuss it. However, in general, there is a lot of motivation. We met many qualified people, well educated, which are really the foundation for economic growth in the long term. And yeah, when it comes to transport, as I said, I was really happy to see some bicycles on the road. Like for those first comers, it's sometimes a little bit dangerous. I was also in those risks of getting into an accident, but we managed well as a group, and we really got around well, had a great time here in the country.
Fantastic. That's a great vote of confidence. Just as we come to the end of the show, do you have any brief parting remarks?
There is the big issue of climate change. The CO2 emissions in Germany are about 10 times higher than per capita than here in Kenya. So it was our responsible for the climate change taking place already here in Kenya, which really affected the people. We talked to people about the losing the rain season and things like that, effects on agriculture, floodings going on right now. So there are those issues already available. Of course, first of all, industrialized countries like Germany carry a large burden because of our historical emissions. However, I can just recommend learn from the mistakes we did. there are plenty of solutions available worldwide. Other developing countries having great plans there for transport in other parts of society. So just pick the best one.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for coming to the show. There you have it from Dr. Thild Becker, who's a transport analyst in Germany. He spent the last 1 week in Kenya conferencing and also cycling all the way to Uganda. It was very interesting to get his perspective with regards to infrastructure spending. How can we do it better and what can we learn from Germany? I think the key thing here is, yes, we are on a right trajectory. Our country is certainly developing, and he sees a lot of vibrancy in this economy. That vote of confidence is certainly very positive for us at this point in time, especially when you need somebody who's looking from the outside in to give us a different perspective. But from what he said is we could do better, and we just need to learn from countries such as his country as well as other countries to ensure that every dollar that we actually put into infrastructure can benefit us at this point in time. In other words, we can optimize this opportunity without necessarily ladening the future generations with unnecessary debt. With that, we will leave you with an update with regards to the infrastructure bond that the government is seeking to raise 60 billion. They have not put out a coupon on this particular paper. It will be market determined. The auction date, or rather the last day that you can actually participate in this issuance, is the 23rd of October. Now, this is an issuance by the government of Kenya, and it has absolutely no tax affiliated with it. If it's something of interest, it's certainly worth speaking to your financial advisors to see if you can be able to tap into this particular infrastructure paper and make some money out of it. Thank you once again for joining us. Enjoy the long day, the long weekend. Happy Mashujaa weekend. See you again on Tuesday, same time. Good afternoon.